What did you learn today?
I learned about the free market economy.
What is a free market economy?
A free market economy is a market in which there is no economic intervention and regulation by the state.
So, is the American economy a free market economy without intervention and regulation?
Only in name. The Fed actually regulates the economy.
So we are still called a free market economy, even though we are regulated by the Fed?
Yes.
What is this Fed?
It's short for the Federal Reserve.
So is the Fed free?
No, it costs $2 billion a year to operate.
And who pays the $2 billion a year to run the Fed?
The American people.
Then what part of the free market system that the Fed regulates is really free?
I don't have an answer to that.
Why do we even have a Federal Reserve in the first place?
It is supposed to prevent economic depressions.
But are we not in a depression now?
It would seem so.
Does the Fed know that we are in a depression now?
Yes, but I believe they call it an economic down curve.
So is that all the Fed does?
No, it also distributes the money printed by the US Treasury.
How much money has been distributed by the Fed?
The 2007 figures show that $829 billion are in circulation.
Does that include the recent bailouts?
No, the $700 billion bailout in 2008 by the Bush administration and the $700 billion by Congress and President Obama was not included in this figure.
So the bailouts were for nearly double the entire amount of money previously in circulation?
Yes, approximately $1,400 billion.
That is an insane amount of money. Is there anything else the Fed does?
It lends money to Congress.
You are describing what sounds like a bank.
That is correct. It is a privately owned bank.
Who owns this privately owned bank?
The Federal Reserve is owned by several other privately owned banks.
Which privately owned banks?
The owners of the Fed are Lehman Brothers of New York, Goldman Sachs of New York, Rockefeller Brothers of New York, Rothschilds of London and Berlin, Lazard Brothers of Paris, Israel Moses Seif of Italy, Kuhn Loeb Company of Germany and New York, and Warburg and Company of Hamburg, Germany.
Where did the money come from to pay for the bailouts of these banks?
From the Fed.
And who decides on how much money is distributed?
The Fed.
And who gave the Fed authority over all our money?
Congress gave the Federal Reserve authority over the issuance and distribution of all money.
Why did Congress give the Federal Reserve control over our money?
So Congress could have at its disposal an unlimited money source it could draw from.
So Congress gave the Fed authority to issue money simply so they can have a source to borrow from?
That is correct.
Why does Congress need to borrow money?
Congress borrows money to finance its programs, and by doing so avoids raising taxes. They do this to gain public approval and help them succeed in being re-elected.
So the Congress and the President authorize this privately owned bank to issue money, so that the government can borrow this money to pay for its programs, so the taxpayers will think they are doing a good job and keep them in office.
That about says it.
And who pays back the money that Congress borrows from the Fed?
The American people.
And what does the Fed get out of all of this?
The Fed is paid the interest off the money it loans to the government.
So the Federal Reserve is a privately owned bank that lends paper money to the federal government and charges interest for this printed paper?
That about sums it up.
And Congress did this without a gun at its back.
Apparently so.
Let me see if I've got this right. Congress authorizes the Fed to issue paper money that Congress then borrows to fund its programs, so they do not have to raise taxes, so they look good and get re-elected.
That is correct.
Can anyone else besides the Federal Reserve issue money?
No, the Fed has the exclusive license over the issuance of money.
Does that make the privately owned bank known as the Federal Reserve a monopoly?
It would seem so.
Aren't monopolies illegal in America?
Yes, monopolies are in fact illegal.
And Congress agreed to this?
Congress and President Wilson.
Are you freaking kidding me? You mean the taxpayers are giving a portion of everything they earn to this privately owned monopoly for the paper that it issues?
That is one way of putting it.
Is there any other way?
Nothing immediately comes to mind.
How much of the national debt is owed to this privately owned monopoly called the Federal Reserve?
Over 40% of the national debt is owed by the taxpayers to the Fed. The rest was borrowed from other countries and states and other sources.
So the privately owned bank that is known as the Federal Reserve issues money and lends it, and the taxpayers are required to pay it back with interest?
Yes, that is correct.
Has Congress lost their minds?
I can't speak for everyone in Congress.
There must be some mistake.
There is no mistake.
How much money do we owe the privately owned Federal Reserve?
Every citizen owes about $45,000 to the Fed.
Every single citizen?
Every citizen.
Even babies and children?
Every citizen, even babies and children.
Are we getting the debt paid back?
No, we are borrowing more money and increasing the debt all the time.
So where does all the taxpayers' money go?
Toward paying off the interest.
Does any of this make any kind of sense to you?
Well, that's the way it is.
To me that seems to be a form of slavery.
It has been made legal.
Well, slavery was legal at one time too. None of this explains how the Federal Reserve regulates the economy.
The Federal Reserve regulates the economy by increasing the money supply.
How does increasing the money supply regulate the economy?
It causes inflation.
How does causing inflation regulate the economy?
By causing all goods and services to increase in value.
How does making everything worth more regulate the economy?
When things cost more, the individual has less purchasing power and people are required to give more time and effort to the earning of money in order to purchase those same products.
Is this some cruel joke?
No, it is not a joke.
Did the American people agree to all of this lunacy?
No, actually the majority of the American people do not even know what the Federal Reserve is about. Most people are of the notion it is part of the government.
So we don't actually need a Federal Reserve, it is just a way for politicians to get money without going to the American people for taxes, and this helps politicians get re-elected somehow.
I suppose there is some truth to that.
Do the taxpayers have any say in our economy that the Federal Reserve regulates?
No.
Does Congress or the President have any say in the regulation of the economy by the Fed?
No.
So let me see if I got this straight. We have a free market economy that isn't free. Congress authorizes a private bank to issue money that the government borrows from and never pays back. And the American taxpayer is saddled with the bill?
Yes, that about sums it up, except for the Fed's regulation of the economy through inflation.
So the Fed regulates the economy by pumping more money into the economy, creating inflation, which makes everything cost more? So instead of paying taxes directly to the government, we pay for the loan that is actually just another form of taxing the American people.
Yes, that seems to be the case.
Could this be some bad dream?
No, it is very real.
Does the inflation, or this covert tax that regulates the economy, help the economy?
Since founding the Federal Reserve, regulations have eaten into 95% of the value of the dollar.
Did you say 95% of the dollar has been taken by the Fed?
Yes, that is correct.
Is anyone monitoring the activities of the Fed?
No, but Congress is conducting a hearing and has been asking questions.
What types of questions?
For instance, the whereabouts of $9 trillion.
Did you say $9 trillion?
Yes.
And what was their answer?
They were unable to satisfactorily answer the Congress.
So they lost $9 trillion and would not answer the Congress?
Well, if not knowing where the money is means losing it, yes.
What kind of bank loses track of $9 trillion?
One that was appointed by the government.
This is like an episode of The Twilight Zone. I am getting the idea we are being lied to.
That is not an entirely new idea,